I'm Lena. My world used to be pretty decent, with my mom, Jane, being the cool optometrist in town and my dad, Richard, playing the hotshot plastic surgeon. Our house was always buzzing, either with mom's gentle guidance or dad's big tales of making people beautiful. Lena, pass those files, will ya? Mom would call out during her sessions at home. I loved being her sidekick, feeling kinda important in our little clinic world. Dad was another story. He'd breeze in, all charm and stories about his latest masterpiece surgeries. You know, beauty ain't just about what you see. Mom would hit back, trying to teach me something deeper. I didn't get all their jabs at each other, but I felt the chill in the air. Our dinners were a mix of medicine talk and dad's bragging, till he started coming home late, the air thick with unsaid stuff. Late work again? Mom would dig, her voice sharp. Someone's gotta do the real work around here, Jane. Dad snapped one evening, colder than ever. Mom's face would tighten, but she kept her words locked up. Then, the storm hit. Dad had been messing around with his much younger assistant. The day he decided to bail, he packed up like he was just heading off to another conference, not leaving his whole life behind. Richard, how can you just walk out on us? Mom tried to fight, her voice all shaky. It's not you, it's me. Look after your mom, Lena, he said, barely glancing my way. His advice felt like a slap. Wasn't he supposed to be the one looking after us? What followed was a nightmare. Mom dove headfirst into a depression so bad, it felt like she'd vanished. We had to ditch our home for a cramped apartment, all cause Dad decided he wanted the house for himself and his new chick. Why's he doing this, Mom? I couldn't wrap my head around the mess. People change, Lena. Or maybe they just show their true colors. We'll get through, she whispered, but it was like talking to a ghost. She was out of it, barely holding on. We were sinking fast, and then came my grandparents, throwing us a lifeline with all the love and backup we needed. Your mom's stronger than she knows, Lena. We'll help her back on her feet, Grandpa would say, him and Grandma standing like two pillars by our side. They never trash-talked Dad, but the lesson was clear, family's what you have when the world turns its back. Then came the final blow. Dad wanted the house, all for himself and his new family. Mom was too beaten down to fight, nearly letting him have it all. But then, my grandparents stepped in, guns blazing. They hired a lawyer who fought tooth and nail, managing to claw back half the house's value. That house got sold, and with that money, Mom could afford a small apartment for us. Life took a nosedive after Dad bolted. Mom, once vibrant and full of life, became a shell of herself. Our new digs? A cramped apartment that felt more like a box than a home. The shift from our comfortable life to this was like night to day, and not in a good way. Mom's clinic work dried up. She'd stare at the phone as if willing it to ring, but it sat silent, a mocking reminder of how far we'd fallen. The days she managed to drag herself to the clinic were victories, but they were few and far between. Lena, breakfast. She'd call out on her good days, her voice lacking its usual warmth. I knew those days. It meant she was trying, for me. I'd shuffle into the kitchen, finding her staring out the window, coffee untouched. You okay, Mom? I'd ask, even though I knew the answer. I'm fine, honey. Just tired. She'd lie, plastering on a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. School became my escape. It was there I could pretend everything was normal, that my family wasn't crumbling. But kids talk, and it wasn't long before whispers of my dad's affair and our fall from grace reached my ears. Hey, Lena, heard your dad left 'cause he got tired of your mom. That true? Jack, a kid with too much mouth and too little sense, sneered one day. Shut it, Jack. You don't know anything. I'd snap back, fists clenched. I learned to fight with words, my tongue as sharp as any knife. At home, the silence was deafening. Mom and I, we were like two ghosts, passing each other in a fog of sadness. But then, Grandma and Grandpa stepped in. They were our rock, refusing to let us sink further. Jane, you can't let this beat you. "You're stronger than this," Grandpa would say, his voice firm yet filled with concern. "I know, Dad. It's just hard," Mom would respond, her voice a whisper, her spirit broken. "Hard? Life's always hard. It's about getting up, dusting yourself off, and going again. Lena needs you," Grandma would chime in, no nonsense as ever. Their visits brought light into our dim world. They helped with bills, groceries, and most of all, they brought hope. Hope that things could get better, that we weren't alone. "Lena, why don't you help me with this?" Grandma would say, handing me a recipe. Cooking became our therapy, a way to bridge the gap the silence had created. I watched Mom slowly, ever so slowly, start to come back to life. She began seeing patients again, her clinic's phone starting to ring with life. It was a slow climb, but we were making it, step by step. "You think you can handle school and helping me at the clinic?" Mom asked one day, her eyes holding a spark I hadn't seen in ages. "Yeah, Mom, I can. Let's do this," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. But I was ready to fight, ready to help us move forward. The struggles were real, but they made us stronger. The betrayal, the hurt, it was all part of our story, but it wasn't the end. It was just a chapter, one that taught us about resilience, about fighting back when life knocks you down. Then my grandparents died quietly one after the other. They left us a legacy, a bittersweet gift that propelled us into a new chapter. With it, Mom found the strength to open her own ophthalmology clinic. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of our past. "I'm thinking of naming it Visionary Futures," Mom announced one evening, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Sounds like a superhero base, not an eye clinic," I joked, trying to lighten the mood. Mom chuckled, shaking her head. "Maybe so, but it's about looking ahead, Lena. We're moving forward, not looking back." I helped set up the clinic, painting walls, assembling furniture, and sorting through endless boxes of medical supplies. It was hard work, but there was a sense of hope and purpose in the air that had been missing for too long. "Lena, can you help me with this?" Mom called out from the reception area. I walked over to find her struggling with the computer system we'd installed. "Let me try," I said, taking over the keyboard. "You know, for a tech-savvy generation, I'm pretty useless at this stuff." "You're doing better than me." "I still miss paper records," Mom replied with a sigh. The clinic slowly started to take shape, becoming more than just a building. It became a symbol of our resilience. We were both learning and growing, finding our footing in this new reality. Opening day arrived faster than we anticipated. Mom was a bundle of nerves, double-checking everything and pacing the floor of the clinic. "What if no one shows up? What if we fail?" she whispered to me, her usual confidence wavering. "We won't," I said firmly, more to reassure myself than her. "You're the best eye doc in town. People will come." And come they did. The clinic was busier than we ever imagined, with patients praising Mom's expertise and the warm, welcoming environment we'd created. It felt like we were finally turning a page, leaving the shadow of Dad's betrayal behind us. In the midst of all this, I started to find my own place in the clinic. I wasn't just the daughter of the owner, I was a part of the team, helping patients and learning more about ophthalmology than I ever thought possible. "Lena, you have a real knack for this," Mom said one day, watching me interact with a particularly difficult patient. "Have you ever thought about going into medicine yourself?" I shrugged, unsure. The thought had crossed my mind, but it felt like a huge step. Maybe. I like helping people, and working here has been eye-opening, no pun intended. Mom laughed, pulling me into a hug. "Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. We've come a long way, haven't we?" "Yeah, we have," I agreed, looking around the busy clinic. "We really have." As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the clinic thrived. We were no longer just surviving, we were living. It wasn't always easy, and the shadow of the past sometimes loomed over us, but we faced each challenge together, stronger and more united than ever. After high school, I had this crossroads moment, you know? Mom sat me down one evening, her clinic files spread out like a sea around us. "Lena," she started, that serious tone in her voice that always made me listen up. "Have you given any thought to becoming an optometrist? You've got the brains and the heart for it." Honestly, I had tossed the idea around in my mind, playing with it like a puzzle piece, trying to find where it fit in my future. "Yeah, I've thought about it, Mom. It's just big, you know? Following in your footsteps." She smiled, that warm, reassuring smile that could light up our cramped living room. "Big, yes, but not impossible. You've been my right hand here since you could barely reach the counter. You've got this, Lena." So, I took the leap. I enrolled in medical college, diving headfirst into the world of medicine. Those years were a blur of textbooks, late-night study sessions, and more coffee than I care to admit. But I made it through, graduating with a sense of accomplishment that was both mine and a tribute to the path Mom had paved for me. I interned at her clinic, getting hands-on with everything from patient consultations to managing the inventory of lenses and frames. It was during this time I continued my medical education, never letting the dream of expanding our clinic fade into the background. Then came the International Ophthalmology Exhibition in our city. It was a big deal, and Mom had been buzzing about it for weeks. "Lena, this could be a game-changer for us," she'd said, her eyes sparkling with that familiar mix of excitement and determination. And she was right, but not just about the clinic. At the exhibition, I met Alex. He was there representing a major pharmaceutical company, and from the moment I saw him, it felt like someone had punched the air out of me. He had this easy charm, a smile that felt like it was just for me, and eyes that listened. We got to talking, first about the boring stuff, supply contracts, new drugs on the market, the usual. But then, the conversation drifted. He asked about my work at the clinic, about what it was like growing up in a family so dedicated to healthcare. "You really love it, huh? The clinic, I mean," he said, leaning in, genuinely interested. "Yeah, I do. It's more than just a job, you know? It's part of who I am," I replied, surprised at how easy it was to open up to him. He nodded, that smile never leaving his face. "I get that. It's the same for me. Passion drives us." Things moved fast after that. Alex started showing up at the clinic, under the pretense of official pharmaceutical business, but we both knew it was more. He'd bring coffee, we'd steal moments between patients to chat, and before I knew it, I was falling hard. One day, after the clinic had closed and we were alone, he turned to me, took my hands in his, and said, "Lena, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you." My heart raced, my stomach did somersaults, and all I could manage was a whispered, "I love you, too." He smiled, that now familiar smile that promised so much more. Then, "Lena, will you marry me?" It was sudden, but then, the best things in life usually are. "Yes," I said, no hesitation. "Yes, I will." The excitement of the engagement consumed us. We dove into wedding planning, our days filled with talk of dates, venues, and dresses. Life at the clinic was usually a calm sea, the kind you'd want after a storm's passed. That day, though, it felt like the storm decided to make a U-turn. I was sitting behind the reception desk, scrolling through wedding dresses on the clinic's computer, dreaming, planning. That's when the door banged open, like trouble decided to walk in on two legs, dressed in expensive clothes that screamed louder than their voices. The couple, a man and a woman, strolled in like they owned the place, eyeballing everything with a mix of disdain and superiority. The man, about 60, with an air that he'd breathed better air than the rest of us, was the first to break the silence. "Hey, we need to see the doc, pronto. Got no appointment, but tell her it's urgent," he barked, his voice grating against my already fraying patience. I plastered on my professional smile, the one Mom taught me for just such occasions. "I'm sorry, but we're fully booked for the next 2 weeks. I can take your number and call you if there's a cancellation?" His reaction was like I slapped him with the schedule. What? You can't squeeze in a real doctor? Do you even know who I am? Before I could muster a response that wouldn't get me fired, his gaze landed on my computer screen. The smirk that crawled up his face was enough to make my skin crawl. Looking at wedding dresses on the job? And look at you, thinking someone would marry that? I felt my cheeks burn, not from embarrassment but pure, boiling anger. Excuse me, but my personal time is none of your business. Now, if you don't have an appointment, I must ask you to leave. His laughter was like sandpaper to my ears. This is how you treat people here? No wonder this place looks like a dump. And you, girl, ever thought of visiting a plastic surgeon? That nose and those lips could use some work. I was about to launch myself over the desk and show him exactly what this girl could do when Mom came out. Her timing was always either perfect or disastrous, depending on how you looked at it. Her eyes widened in shock. Richard? The atmosphere turned electric. Richard, the illustrious father who'd taken a hike from our lives, looked like he'd just swallowed a bug. And who might you be? His voice was laced with feigned ignorance, but the venom was palpable. Mom's backbone turned to steel. The mother of the girl you've just insulted, she shot back, her tone slicing through the tension like a scalpel. His companion, a walking advertisement for plastic perfection, piped up. Let's go, honey. This place isn't worth our time. That's when Mom turned to me, her voice loud enough to cut through the standoff. Lena, this piece of work is your biological father. Be thankful he left, we're better off without his delightful company. The man, my so-called father, Richard, recoiled as if Mom's words were physical blows. His arrogance deflated slightly, revealing a flicker of something else. Was it guilt? Or just surprise at being confronted so directly? You can't talk to me like that, Jane. I've achieved things you wouldn't even dream of. He shot back, trying to recover his earlier bravado. Mom snorted. Achieved? Destroying families? Abandoning your daughter? If those are achievements, then yes, you're quite successful. The room felt too small for the growing tension. I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching this surreal exchange between my parents. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You want to look away, but you just can't. Just when I thought the drama couldn't crank up any higher, Dad brushed off Mom's words like they were just pesky flies and doubled down. Look, just get the owner. My time's precious, and I'm not about to let your little clinic's reputation tank because you can't recognize importance when it's staring you in the face. Mom stood her ground, her voice calm but laced with steel. The owner? You're looking at her. And Lena here, she's not just my daughter. She's the co-owner and the future of this clinic. The look on Dad's and his new wife's faces? Priceless. Like someone had slapped them with the reality stick. Then Alex, my fiancé, sauntered in, quiet as a cat but with a presence that filled the room. Mom wasn't done, though. She launched into Dad like a missile. You left us for your assistant, stole our money, and made life a misery. But look at us now. We're standing strong, and frankly, I thank God we're rid of a nobody like you. Dad tried to puff himself up, all indignant like. Changed my mind about this place. Got my own clinic with top-notch specialists. Just needed a quick consult while on the road, that's all. That's when Alex, bless him, chimed in. Your clinic? Aren't you the same guy who botched that surgery on the Hollywood star? Got your license yanked and left drowning in lawsuits? You could practically see the steam coming off Dad. His face went from red to ghost white. That's all lies. I'm well respected in my field. Alex didn't skip a beat. Respected? The only thing you're leading in is the race to the bottom. Bankrupt, tangled in legal troubles, and now this pathetic show? Not much of a legacy. Dad just soaked it all in, face getting redder with every word, until he couldn't take it anymore. That's a load of bull. He exploded, his voice cracking under the pressure. I'm a legend in plastic surgery. My hands work magic. He gestured dramatically towards his wife, as if she was his masterpiece exhibit. Mom, Alex, and I couldn't help but take a good look at her, and, well, let's just say it wasn't a pretty sight. The work he'd done was questionable at best. Seeing our reactions, Dad's wife lost it. She hurled insults at him like grenades, her voice sharp and cutting. "Bad doctor. Bankrupt. You're a disgrace." And with that, she stormed out, leaving a silence that echoed off the clinic walls. Dad, now alone and looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, slunk off after her without another word. It was like watching the end of a sad, twisted play. After my dad and his wife made their less than graceful exit, the clinic felt lighter somehow, like we'd just aired out a room that had been closed off for too long. Mom and I shared a look, a mix of relief and disbelief. Alex stood by the reception, a silent but solid support system. "Can you believe that just happened?" I broke the silence, still reeling from the encounter. Mom let out a laugh, the tension in her shoulders easing. "Believe it? I lived it. And honestly, Lena, I'm just glad it's over." Alex came over, putting an arm around me. "You both handled that brilliantly. If that was me, I don't think I could have kept my cool." I smiled, leaning into him. "We've had a bit of practice dealing with difficult patients, but he's on another level." "Yeah, well, he's gone now. And from what I've seen, he won't be back anytime soon," Alex added, ever the optimist. Mom nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "It's strange. For so long, the thought of facing him seemed like the ultimate showdown. Now that it's happened, it feels like, I don't know, like closing a book I've been reading for too long." "That's because we're on to the next chapter," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "And this time, we're writing it on our terms." As the day wound down, I found myself staring at the door Dad had walked out of. It was just a door, but it felt symbolic, like the barrier between our past and our future. "Thinking about locking that door and throwing away the key?" Alex joked, coming up beside me. "Something like that," I admitted. "But more about all the doors that are still open for us." Mom joined us, her arm linking with mine. "He may have left a shadow here once, but we're the ones who choose what fills this place now. Love, care, and a whole lot of hard work." "Yeah, and a no jerks allowed policy," I added, earning a chuckle from both of them. As we locked up the clinic that evening, the sunset painted the sky in hues of hope and promise. The departure of shadows wasn't just about Dad leaving, it was about us stepping out from under the weight of his influence, ready to face the light of a new day. A few months down the line, the wedding bells were ringing. Me and Alex tied the knot in this cozy little ceremony. Just a bunch of our relatives and close friends, the kind of people who'd been there through thick and thin. Dad? He was nowhere in sight, which suited me just fine. The day was perfect without his shadow looming over us. Chatting with some of the docs we knew, the gossip mills were churning. Turns out Dad had crashed and burned, big time. Debts up to his eyeballs, and his last bit of property snatched away to cover some of them. And the cherry on top? A lineup of angry patients with botched jobs ready to take him to court. Karma's a real kicker, ain't it? "So, he's really tanked, huh?" I said to Mom over coffee one morning, trying not to sound too smug about it. Mom sighed, her eyes a mix of relief and something a bit softer, maybe pity. "Seems like it, Lena. But let's not dwell on it. We've got our own lives to live." "Yeah, you're right," I replied, feeling a twinge of, I don't know, something. Not exactly sadness, but close. It's just crazy, you know? After everything. Alex, ever the voice of reason, chimed in. Life's about moving forward, not looking back at the debris. We've got a lot to be thankful for. He was right, as usual. The wedding was a blast, a real celebration of new beginnings. And with Dad's drama finally in the rearview, it felt like we could breathe again, really breathe. Our little family's got a bright future ahead, Mom said, her hand finding mine. Let's focus on that. And that's exactly what we did. The clinic thrived, our marriage was full of love and laughter, and the shadow of Dad's legacy faded into nothing more than a bad memory. We were building something new, something ours, and nothing could drag us down. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. The hardships, the battles, they made us who we are. And standing there, with my mom and Alex by my side, I knew we were unbreakable. The past was just that, the past. Our eyes were set on the horizon, eager for the dawn of our new day. I'm Jess, and if you told me 11 years ago that my life would take such a wild turn, I'd have laughed it off. But here I am, stuck in a reality I never imagined. It all began innocently enough. I met Jack at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was charming, with a smile that could light up a room, and we hit it off right away. Fast forward through a whirlwind romance, and we were married, living what seemed like a dream. A year into our marriage, our son Max came into the world, making our little family feel complete. Life got real tough when Max started getting sick all the time. My job was on the line, but my boss, Mr. Harris, he was a lifesaver. Jess, you're a rock star at work, and we can't lose you. How about you work from home? Keep an eye on the little guy and keep the ball rolling here, he suggested. And just like that, my living room turned into my new office. Juggling work calls, Max's needs, and household chores became my new norm. But that's where the fairy tale ended and real life began. As I became this superwoman handling it all, something in Jack changed. The man who used to help around the house, who used to play with Max for hours, began to change. It was like he resented me for being at home, even though it was for our son. He'd walk in from work, not even a hello before he'd slump on the couch, eyes glued to his phone. Jack, could you help Max with his homework? I'd ask after a long day of balancing spreadsheets and laundry. I'm beat, Jess. You handle it. You're home all day, aren't you? He'd reply, not even looking up. His words stung, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to fight in front of Max, who was becoming more perceptive each day. But it wasn't just me. His attitude towards Max shifted too. Gone were the days of patient father-son chats. Now, it was all short, snappy comments. Max, quit being a baby. Man up. Jack would snap when Max struggled with something. I tried to talk to Jack about it, to understand what was eating at him. But every attempt just bounced off him like he was made of stone. Jack, we need to talk. This isn't working, I said one evening when Max was at a sleepover. Here we go again. Nag, nag, nag. You know, maybe if you weren't so busy playing the perfect housewife, you'd see I'm dealing with real stress at work, he retorted, his words laced with a bitterness that took me aback. But we're supposed to be a team, Jack. It's us against the problem, not us against each other, I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Save it, Jess. I've got enough on my plate without home becoming another battlefield, he said, dismissing the conversation with a wave of his hand before storming out. I stood there, in the silence of our living room, feeling more alone than ever. It was like living with a stranger, a man who wore the same face as my husband but carried none of his warmth, none of his love. The shift in Jack's behavior didn't just come out of the blue. It crept in slowly, like a shadow growing longer as the sun sets, until one day, the room was dark. About 3 years back, that's when the late nights started becoming more frequent. Each time Jack walked through the door past midnight, his excuses were as thin as paper. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Max had just won his soccer game, and we were waiting to celebrate with Jack. But as usual, the chair at the head of the table remained empty. Max's eyes kept darting to the clock, then to the door, and finally, settling on me with a mix of disappointment and confusion. I plastered a smile on my face, trying to keep the mood light. Your dad's really swamped at work, honey. But he's so proud of you, you know that, right? I reassured Max, but the words felt hollow even to me. It wasn't until much later that Jack decided to grace us with his presence. The sound of the door creaking open pulled me out of my troubled thoughts. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the remains of a celebration that never was laid out in front of me. Jack walked in, looking worn out, but there was something else in his demeanor, something off. I could smell the faint trace of perfume, definitely not mine, and it made my stomach churn. "Jack, where have you been? Max waited up for you. He won his game today, remember?" I tried to keep the accusation out of my voice, but it was hard. The game. Yeah, work, Jess. It's killing me. You know how it is," Jack mumbled, not even bothering to meet my gaze as he made a beeline for the fridge. "No, I don't know, Jack. It seems like work is all you ever have to say these days. And what's that smell? Since when do your colleagues wear such strong perfume?" I pushed, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Jack's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "What are you implying, Jess? That I'm cheating on you? That's rich, coming from someone who's holed up here all day." The accusation stung, and I felt my face flush with anger. "I'm here taking care of our son, our home, while you're out there doing God knows what. And it's not just the perfume, Jack. I found a strand of black hair on your jacket. Last time I checked, my hair was blonde." Jack let out a scoff, his ego inflating like a balloon. "Oh, please, Jess. You're being paranoid. You think just because I come home smelling like someone else's perfume, I'm having an affair? Maybe you're just jealous. Maybe you still want me, huh?" I was taken aback by his mockery. It wasn't like him. The Jack I knew would have reassured me, would have laughed it off and made me feel like a fool for even doubting. But this man, this stranger in my kitchen, he was egging me on, almost enjoying it. "You think this is funny, Jack? Our marriage is hanging by a thread, and you're standing there making jokes? What happened to you?" My voice broke, the frustration and hurt I'd been bottling up finally spilling over. Jack shrugged, his expression cold and detached. "Maybe I've just had enough, Jess. Enough of this domestic bliss you keep trying to shove down my throat. I'm out there busting my ass every day, and I come home to this nagging and suspicion. You want to know where I've been? Out, where I don't have to deal with this crap." With those words, he grabbed a beer from the fridge and headed towards the living room, leaving me standing there, a mix of disbelief and anger coursing through me. As I heard the TV flick on, the familiar sound of laughter from some late-night show filling the house, I realized that the gap between us had grown too wide to bridge with mere words. The day started like any other, with Max's laughter filling the house as I juggled work and household chores. But a call from Mr. Harris changed everything. "Jess, we need you in the office today. Big client coming in, and we can't do this without you," he said. I was torn. Max was down with one of his fevers again, and with Jack's unpredictable schedule, I couldn't just leave our son alone. I called Jack, hoping he'd understand the urgency. "Jack, it's important. Mr. Harris needs me at the office. Can you come home early today? Max isn't feeling well." Jack's response was a cold splash of reality. "Are you kidding me, Jess? You know I can't just leave work in the middle of the day. Handle it, like you always do." His words stung, but there was no time to argue. I called Helen, Jack's mom, and thank heavens, she agreed to help. "Of course, dear. You go and take care of your work. Max will be fine with me." The meeting was intense, but we nailed it. Mr. Harris suggested celebrating at a nearby restaurant, and though my mind was at home with Max, I couldn't refuse. We settled into our seats, the clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversations around us. But as I scanned the room, my heart dropped. There, in a dimly lit corner, was Jack, his hand on another woman's, their heads close together in intimate conversation. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Mr. Harris noticed my pale face. "Jess, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I shook my head, not trusting my voice. I need a moment," I managed to say, my legs shaky as I stood up. I headed to the restroom, my mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Not Jack. Not us. But the truth was right there, laughing and flirting over candlelight. I splashed water on my face, trying to calm the storm inside me. As I looked in the mirror, a fierce determination replaced the shock. I wouldn't let this slide. Not this time. Back at the table, I apologized to Mr. Harris and the clients. "I'm sorry, I need to take care of something urgent. Please excuse me." I left the restaurant, my mind a whirlwind of hurt and anger. Jack didn't even notice me leave, so engrossed was he in his affair. I made it home, my hands trembling as I opened the door. Helen was there, her concerned eyes meeting mine. "Is everything all right, dear?" I couldn't spill it, not then. "Just a rough day at work, Helen. Thanks for watching, Max." Helen gave me a knowing look. "Anything you want to talk about?" I forced a smile. "Nothing to worry about. Just work stuff." "Thanks again, Helen." After Helen left, the silence of the house wrapped around me. The image of Jack with that woman replayed in my mind. But I wasn't about to let anger take the wheel. This fury was fuel. Jack had made his choice, and now it was my move. The game had shifted, and as the night crept in, a plan began to form. A plan to make sure Jack regretted betraying the family he took for granted. The next morning felt heavy, like I was carrying a weight around my heart. Jack had left early, his usual routine, acting like nothing was wrong. But everything had changed for me. As I watched Max play, his innocence a stark contrast to the mess of our lives, I knew I had to act. But how? I couldn't just confront Jack without proof, and my word against his wouldn't hold up. I remembered a conversation with a friend about a private detective they had used. It seemed like a drastic step, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I waited until Max was settled with his video games, then I made the call. "Hello, is this Mr. Reynolds?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, this is he." "How can I help you, ma'am?" came the reply, professional and to the point. I took a deep breath. I need your services. I suspect my husband is involved with someone else. I need proof." Mr. Reynolds was all business. "I understand, ma'am. We handle these cases with utmost discretion. Can you tell me more about your situation?" I poured out the details, the late nights, the perfume, the restaurant incident. Mr. Reynolds listened without interruption, then said, "We can start surveillance on your husband immediately. We'll gather evidence and keep you updated. My fee is—" I agreed without hesitation. The price didn't matter, I needed the truth. Days turned into weeks, and each time Mr. Reynolds sent over photos or snippets of conversations, my heart sank a little more. Jack with the same woman, at restaurants, at a park, and once, chillingly, at a jewelry store. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion, each piece of evidence a brutal confirmation of Jack's betrayal. One evening, as I sat staring at the latest set of photos, Max came up to me. "Mom, why are you sad? Did something happen?" I quickly hid the photos and forced a smile. "It's nothing, honey. Just some work stuff. You know how it is." Max looked unconvinced. "If Dad is making you sad, I can tell him to stop. He should be nice to you." I hugged him, tears threatening to spill. "You're such a good boy, Max. But it's not your fight. Mom's got this under control, okay?" Max nodded, but his eyes still held worry. It broke my heart to see him like this, but it also steeled my resolve. Jack had to be held accountable, not just for me, but for Max's sake too. Max's 10th birthday should have been a day of joy and laughter, a celebration of a decade of life. The house was decorated, the cake was ready, and Max's eyes sparkled with excitement. But as the day unfolded, it became clear that it was going to be anything but typical. Jack, once the cornerstone of our little family, had been drifting away, his presence now just a shadow. This day was no different. "Jess, work slammed. I can't make it," he said over the phone, his voice as cold as the winter wind. I watched from the window as he drove off, leaving a cloud of dust and a heavy heart behind. Helen and George, Jack's folks, did their best to fill the void, their faces a mix of concern and disappointment. The party was in full swing, the sound of children's laughter a bittersweet melody. Then, out of nowhere, my phone shattered the calm. Jack's voice, panicked and loud, boomed through the speaker. "Our son's been hit. He's at the hospital now." The room froze, the festive air turning to ice. But there, right in front of me, was Max, safe and unharmed. "Jack, check your number." "Max is right here, safe and sound," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt like an eternity. Then, a quiet, "Sorry, wrong number," before the line went dead. The room was thick with confusion and unspoken questions. I gently nudged Max towards his room, his new video game in hand. "Go on, sweetie." "I'll be right there," I said, mustering a smile that felt more like a grimace. Once Max was out of sight, I turned to face Helen and George. Their faces were a mix of shock and worry, a silent demand for an explanation hanging in the air. "Helen, George, there's something you need to know," I began, my heart heavy. "Jack hasn't just been buried in work. He's involved with someone else. They have a child together, a little boy." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Helen's eyes welled with tears, and George's jaw clenched, his anger barely contained. "Jess, are you certain?" Helen's voice was a whisper, her world crumbling. I nodded, the truth a bitter pill. "I've seen them, heard their conversations. It's undeniable." The room was silent, the weight of betrayal pressing down on us. "We're with you, Jess. Our son, doing this, it's unforgivable," Helen said, her voice quivering but strong. George stood up, his posture rigid with resolve. "Jack will have to face us, to explain this madness. He owes you, answers." The rest of the day was a haze. The candles were blown out, the cake was cut, but the joy was overshadowed by the storm that loomed on the horizon. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I realized that this was no longer just my battle. That evening, the house was quiet, too quiet. It was the calm before the storm. I sat in the living room, Helen and George by my side, the air heavy with anticipation. We were waiting for Jack, the man who had shattered our lives with his deceit. The door creaked open, and there he was, sneaking in like a thief, unaware of the confrontation that awaited him. He tiptoed towards the stairs, but before he could take another step, I flicked on the light. "Evening, Jack. How's your son? The one who got hit by a car?" I asked, my voice calm but laced with a venom that made him freeze in his tracks. Helen and George sat there, silent sentinels, their eyes fixed on Jack, waiting for his response. Jack's face went pale, his facade crumbling. That was a bad joke, Jess. I didn't mean it." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "A joke? Is that what you call it?" Without another word, I threw the photos and documents on the table in front of him. Each picture, each piece of paper, a testament to his betrayal. "This is no joke, Jack. This is your other life, laid bare for all to see." Jack's eyes darted from the photos to his parents, the magnitude of his actions finally sinking in. I can explain," he stammered, but his words fell flat. "You're done talking, Jack. These pictures, these documents, they speak louder than any lie you could come up with," I said, my resolve steel. Helen let out a sob, her hands covering her face. George's expression was stone, his disappointment a tangible force in the room. "To think our son would stoop this low," he muttered. Jack turned to his parents, desperation in his eyes. "Mom, Dad, I..." But George cut him off, his voice firm and final. "You've made your bed, Jack. Now you lie in it. I'm cutting you off. Everything you would have gotten goes to Max." Jack looked at me, a last-ditch plea in his eyes. "Jess, Please. I'll do anything. Don't do this. But the time for mercy had passed. You had your chance, Jack. Now it's time you face the consequences. I want a divorce, and I'll make sure you pay for every heartache you've caused. The room was silent, the finality of my words hanging in the air. Jack, defeated and broken, gathered his things, his departure marking the end of our life together, but the beginning of a new chapter for me, for Max, for us. Days after Jack's departure, the echo of the door slamming still hung in the air, like a bad odor. I thought I'd seen the last of the drama, but I was dead wrong. The doorbell rang, a sharp, intrusive sound that felt like an invasion. Standing there, with a smirk that could sour milk, was Jack's mistress, her confidence as misplaced as her morals. Well, if it isn't the jilted wife. Time to pack up, darling. Jack's with me now, and so's everything that was yours. This pretty little house? I'm thinking curtains, maybe some new furniture. Her words were like nails on a chalkboard. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter. You're dreaming if you think you can claim my house. This place? It's from my family. Jack couldn't lay a claim on it if he tried. Her smug expression faltered, confusion and anger warring on her face. She whipped out her phone, her false nails tapping furiously. Jack, you better explain this right now. You said this house was ours. In no time, Jack was at the door, his face ashen. The house, it's Jess's, he stammered, avoiding my gaze. The mistress's face turned a shade of red I didn't know existed. You pathetic liar. You promised me a fairy tale, and now you're telling me it's just a bedtime story? I watched the drama unfold, my arms crossed, a smirk playing on my lips. But I had one more card to play. Seems like we're airing dirty laundry today. Why not throw in these? I said, slapping the photos on the table. Looks like someone's been two-timing. Here you are, leaving a hotel with another man. Care to explain, sweetheart? The room erupted into chaos, a tornado of insults, accusations, and shattered illusions. I stood there, the eye of the storm, watching the destruction. Thinking of a paternity test, Jack? Might want to find out if you're really the daddy. The aftermath was a scene from a soap opera. The mistress, her dreams shattered, stormed out, leaving Jack standing in the ruins of his choices. And me? I stood tall, the victor in a battle I never wanted to fight. The final chapter of the tumultuous saga brought both closure and new beginnings. The divorce was more than a legal separation, it was the severing of ties that had bound me to a life of uncertainty and betrayal. Jack, in a desperate attempt to cling to a shred of dignity, underwent the DNA test, only to have his illusions shattered. The child he thought was his bore no trace of his DNA. Helen and George, once the loving grandparents and in-laws, now stood as my steadfast allies. George's decision to create a trust fund for Max wasn't just about securing a future for his grandson, it was a statement, a clear denouncement of Jack's actions. This boy's future won't be clouded by his father's shadow, George had said, his voice heavy with a mix of anger and resolve. The house, once filled with laughter, then whispers of betrayal, was now a sanctuary of peace. It was during one of these quiet evenings that Mr. Harris, or Tom as he insisted, visited. His presence had always been a source of comfort, but this time, there was a different energy about him. Jess, I hope it's okay, me dropping by like this, Tom began, his hands slightly fidgeting, a contrast to his usual composed demeanor. I offered him a smile, the familiarity of his presence a welcome comfort. Of course, Tom. It's always good to see you. He hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. Jess, I've been doing a lot of thinking, especially after everything that's happened. I've seen you handle life's curveballs with such grace and strength. It made me realize something I should have acknowledged a long time ago. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken words and emotions. Tom, what are you trying to say? His gaze met mine, earnest and unwavering. I love you, Jess. Not just as the brilliant colleague you are, not just as the friend who's been by my side. I love you for the incredible woman you are, for the strength you embody. I want to be there for you, for Max, if you'll let me." The confession, honest and raw, stirred something within me. A mix of surprise, fear, and a flicker of hope. "Tom, this is a lot to take in. I appreciate your feelings, truly. But I need time to process, to understand what this means for me, for Max, for us." Tom nodded, understanding etching his features. "Take all the time you need, Jess. I'm not going anywhere. I just wanted you to know how I feel, to understand that whatever the future holds, I'm here." As he left, the silence of the house enveloped me. The words we'd exchanged echoed in my mind, a gentle yet profound reminder that life still had surprises in store, that maybe, the end of one chapter was simply the beginning of another. When I was little, my mom used to tell me stories about my grandpa, how he started with nothing and built a business that could have set us up for life. But we never saw a dime of it. I didn't really get why until I was older and could understand the mess about his will and all. "Eliza, your grandpa was a tough nut," my mom said one chilly evening. We were sitting at our small kitchen table, nursing cups of lukewarm tea. The heater was busted again, and the landlord wasn't too quick to fix anything. He believed only in money earned, not given. "Why did he cut us off then? Didn't he think you'd manage his money right?" I asked, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Mom sighed, her eyes tracing the steam rising from her cup. "It wasn't about me managing it. He had this crazy idea. Made a will that only gave his fortune to someone who made it big on their own, $500,000 at least in their business." "That's just cruel," I muttered. The idea seemed ludicrous, a game set by a man who loved his money more than his family. "It was his way or the highway," Mom continued. "When I argued with him, he practically disowned me. Said if I was any good, I'd earn my way without his help." The unfairness of it all gnawed at me. Here we were, scrimping and saving every dime, while someone out there was living it up on what should have been ours. Ever since I was a kid, I had a knack for spotting a chance to make a buck. I'd set up a lemonade stand at the local golf course on sweltering summer days. 50 cents a cup. I'd holler, waving to the thirsty golfers. They couldn't resist the pitch from a freckle-faced kid with a pitcher. "You sure know how to hustle, kiddo," an old golfer named Hank once told me, chuckling as he handed over his change. "Keep that up, and you'll be a tycoon one day." I grinned, pocketing the coins. "Just saving up for something big," I'd say, my mind always on the next big thing. And it wasn't just lemonade. I made homemade baubles and bracelets, stringing them together from beads I'd find at the dollar store. I sold them wherever I could, neighborhood block parties, school events, even at the front yard during garage sales. Trading wasn't just fun, it felt right, like I was meant to do it. "Eliza's got her own little business empire going," my mom would joke to her friends, but there was a hint of pride in her voice that made me stand a little taller. But it was the sewing that really caught on. When I managed to buy that old sewing machine from a garage sale, it was like all my Christmases had come at once. Teaching myself to sew wasn't easy. The machine was temperamental, and the tutorials online weren't always clear, especially when the internet connection flickered in and out. But I stuck with it. Soon, I was turning drab thrift store finds into trendy outfits. "Eliza, is that the same shirt you wore last week?" Sarah sneered one day as she caught me at my locker. "Looks different." "Yep, gave it a little makeover," I said casually, slamming my locker shut. "You should try it sometime, might improve your attitude." She scoffed and strutted away, but a couple of other girls lingered. "That was really cool what you did with your shirt. Could you do mine?" one of them asked, a shy smile playing on her lips. "Sure thing. Bring it tomorrow," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. Word got around, and soon I was taking custom orders. It wasn't just pocket money anymore, it was real business. People paid good money for uniqueness, and I was all too happy to provide. One sunny afternoon, I dragged my latest creations to the local street fair. I set up a rickety table, laid out my garments, and waited, heart thumping with the thrill of it all. "You think people will buy these?" Mike, my friend, asked, eyeing the passers-by skeptically. "They'd be crazy not to," I shot back, confidence bubbling. And buy they did. My table was swarmed. I barely had time to collect the money and hand over the clothes. Amidst the chaos, a guy approached, his car keys jangling in his hand. "Hey, my car broke down a block from here. Saw your stall. This stuff yours?" he asked, nodding towards my makeshift display. "Yeah, all made by me." "You need something to pass the time while waiting for a tow?" I joked, handing him a shirt. He laughed, a genuine, head-thrown-back kind of laugh. "Actually, I was wondering if you do men's stuff too." "Sure do," I replied, pulling out a few pieces I'd experimented with. He looked them over, then looked at me with a spark of interest. "You've got talent. Ever think of making this a real business?" "Every day," I said, not missing a beat. His smile widened. "I'm Jack, by the way." "Eliza," I said, shaking his hand, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just another sale. This felt like a doorway, swinging wide open. As the day wound down, I counted the cash, a sense of accomplishment washing over me. This was it. I was making it happen, one stitch at a time. "Told you they'd love your stuff," Mike said as he helped me pack up. "Yes, you were right," I admitted, unable to keep the grin off my face. Looks like I might just make that $500,000 mark after all. After Jack and I met at the fair, things kicked off faster than I expected. He wasn't like the guys I knew. He came from money, but he had a way of making you forget about that when you were with him. He had this laid-back vibe, always laughing, always making plans. We started seeing each other more, and it wasn't long before we were seriously dating. One day he said, "Eliza, I think it's time you met my parents." The thought alone made my stomach churn. I knew his folks came from old money, the kind that looked down on people like me. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice tense. "I don't think they'll like me much." Jack laughed it off. "They'll love you. Don't worry so much." The drive over to Jack's parents' house felt like the longest ride of my life. Jack kept talking about mundane stuff, probably trying to ease the tension, but my stomach was in knots. We turned into a long driveway, and there it was, a massive house that looked more like a museum than a home. We walked up to the grand entrance, and the door swung open before we could even knock. There stood Jack's mom, Mrs. Thompson, dressed impeccably in a way that made me feel underdressed instantly, despite my careful choice of outfit. "Jack, darling," she exclaimed, pulling him into a hug, then turned to me with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And you must be Eliza. We've heard so much about you." Her words sounded warm, but her tone was anything but. I forced a smile. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Thompson." Jack led me inside, and that's when Mr. Thompson appeared. He was a tall, stern-looking man with a firm handshake that felt more like a test than a greeting. "Eliza, a pleasure," he said, his voice deep and unemotional. We moved into the living room, which was as grand and cold as the rest of the house. Everything felt stiff and formal. We made small talk, or at least, they did. I mostly nodded and smiled, feeling out of my depth. Dinner was served in a dining room straight out of a magazine, with crystal and fine china that looked like it should be locked up in a display case, not used for eating. We sat down, and that's when the real interrogation began. "So, Eliza, Jack tells us you're into fashion design," Mr. Thompson began, eyeing me like I was a problem he needed to figure out. "Yes, I run a small business. I design and sell clothing," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. Self-made then. How entrepreneurial," he commented dryly. His tone suggested it was less of a compliment and more a checkmark on a list of curiosities. Mrs. Thompson chimed in with a smile that felt more like a wince. "And your family, dear, what do they do?" "Well, it's just me and my mom. She's a nurse," I said, feeling the weight of each word. "Oh, I see. Mrs. Thompson replied, exchanging a glance with her husband that I couldn't quite read. The conversation stumbled along until coffee was served, and then Mrs. Thompson's polite mask slipped. Eliza, I must be honest. We have certain hopes for Jack, and his partner's background is important to us. It's essential for maintaining the family's reputation and legacy. Finally, she put her fork down and said flatly, well, it's clear you've done quite a bit despite your background. But I don't think you're suitable for our son, I'm afraid. Her words hit like a slap. I sat there, stunned, as she got up from the table. I won't waste more time here, she declared and left the room without another word. Jack was quick to comfort me, his face flushed with embarrassment. Eliza, please, don't take it to heart. She said in her ways. It was tough to swallow. The evening had turned into a stark display of where I stood with his family. Despite Jack's reassurances, the shadow of that dinner lingered, casting a long, cold shadow over what should have been a happy milestone. The engagement happened despite the frosty atmosphere at dinner that night at Jack's parents' house. His folks made it clear they weren't thrilled, but Jack went ahead with the proposal. We were officially engaged, and while I was over the moon about us, the chill from his parents was something I couldn't shake off. A few weeks after our engagement, I got a call from Mrs. Thompson, Jack's mom. Her voice was formal, icy. Eliza, I'd like you to come over. We need to discuss something important. When I arrived, both of Jack's parents were waiting. The house felt colder than ever, like all the warmth had been sucked out of it. Mrs. Thompson didn't waste any time. Eliza, we've looked into your background thoroughly, she began, her tone sharp and unwelcoming. Mr. Thompson nodded, his face stern. It's clear you come from a very different world than ours. His wife continued. And frankly, we feel you're hunting for wealth, climbing through our son. But we won't allow our family fortune to be jeopardized. The words stung, but before I could react, Mrs. Thompson slid a stack of papers across the table towards me. Since I can't convince Jack to rethink this marriage, you'll need to sign these, she said flatly. I picked up the papers, they were a prenuptial agreement. As I read through, it was clear, I wouldn't lay claim to any of Jack's wealth, and neither would any children we might have. Without hesitating, I signed them. I'm not marrying Jack for his money, I said, handing the signed papers back to her. Mrs. Thompson looked taken aback, her eyes wide. Even Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, surprised by my quick compliance. I left their house feeling a mix of relief and resentment. At home, I told Jack everything. He laughed it off. Wow, you really showed them. Good for you. But his laughter didn't sit right with me. Aren't you bothered that your mom thinks so lowly of me? She humiliated me, Jack. He shrugged, still smiling. I get why you're upset, but you know how Mom is. She has her reasons, and well, she's not completely wrong to worry, right? His words felt like a slap. Not only had his mother insulted me, but now Jack was subtly defending her. It hurt, realizing that maybe he wasn't entirely in my corner. A year after our engagement, as the wedding drew closer, my life was a whirlwind of excitement and stress. My business, a sportswear brand I had started from scratch, was finally taking off. It was thrilling to see my designs being worn and loved. I had built a small capital, enough to expand and take on bigger challenges. As for the wedding, I wanted something simple, intimate. But Jack had other ideas, he dreamed of a lavish celebration. Eliza, we're only doing this once. Let's make it big, he'd say with that grin that made it hard to argue. So, I agreed, and we planned a grand event. I found myself splitting the bill for a grand venue, exquisite catering, and a band that could keep our guests dancing all night. I managed to snag some deals, haggling discounts wherever I could. Old habits die hard. The wedding day was perfect, at least on the surface. Our guests seemed to have the time of their lives, and Jack and I couldn't stop smiling. We were floating, caught up in a bubble of joy. But not everyone was caught up in the festivity. Throughout the evening, I caught Jack's parents whispering, their faces pinched with disapproval. His mother, ever the social butterfly, floated around the room, dropping hints about her worries that I was after their family wealth. I overheard her telling a group of relatives, "It's all very extravagant, isn't it? I just hope she understands the value of money, not just spending it." Her voice was loud enough to carry, and her words stung more than I expected. After the wedding, things didn't settle down. Jack's mom posted on social media, lamenting that Jack had married someone like me. She wrote about her fear of losing her son to a woman who, in her eyes, wasn't worthy. Reading those words hurt. I felt my throat tighten and my eyes burn, not just with sadness, but with frustration. I tried to talk to Jack about it. "Your mom's posts, they're really harsh. Can you talk to them? They don't even know about the business, how well it's doing." Jack sighed, his face troubled. "Eliza, I know it's tough, but let's not rock the boat, okay? My parents, it's just how they are. But they think I'm some gold digger, Jack. They don't see that I don't need their money." He pulled me close, his voice soothing. I know. But let's just ignore it for now. They'll come around. They just need time to see what I see." I nodded, not convinced, but exhausted from the argument. I agreed to let it go, not because I thought he was right, but because I was too tired to fight. It was easier to focus on my business, pouring my energy into something positive, something that was mine. Despite the personal turmoil, my business kept growing. Orders poured in, and my brand gained a following. I was doing interviews, photo shoots, and even talking about partnerships. My days were packed, and I thrived on the hustle. The evening of the charity dinner arrived, and it was held at a swanky hotel downtown. The event was all about supporting sports programs for kids and teenagers. As the main costume designer, I had decided on a blue and white theme that matched not just the decor, but some of the latest pieces from my sportswear line. Jack and I walked into the grand hall, a room buzzing with well-dressed guests and shimmering lights. I was nervous, but excited to see my designs showcased in such a grand setting. That excitement quickly soured when we spotted his parents across the room. Their cold stares cut right through the warmth of the bustling crowd. Jack noticed but said nothing, and their blatant disregard stung me deeply, but I bit my lip and kept walking. As guests began to arrive, I circulated the room, chatting and networking. Jack was by my side, his usual charming self, but I could tell he was a bit overwhelmed by the scale of the event. "You're really pulling out all the stops, huh?" Jack commented as we watched the crowd from a distance. "Go big or go home, right?" I replied with a wink. "Eliza, you've outdone yourself," a familiar voice said from behind me. Turning around, I saw a local sports celebrity who'd worn my designs before. "These uniforms are fantastic. Thanks so much. Enjoy the evening," I smiled, handing them a business card. "Let's catch up soon." The event was buzzing, the atmosphere electric with enthusiasm and goodwill. Then, the moment of truth arrived. The host took to the stage to thank the sponsors, and my heart raced as he started to speak. We hadn't been seated long when the evening's presenter took the stage to kick off the event. The atmosphere was lively, filled with applause and cheer until it came time to thank the sponsors. My heart raced with pride and anxiety as my name was announced as one of the main contributors. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Eliza, whose generous donation of over $300,000 made tonight possible. The presenter boomed through the microphone. The room erupted in applause, but it was abruptly pierced by a shriek from Mrs. Thompson, Jack's mother. "Absolutely not," she screamed, drawing the room into a shocked silence. She demanded a microphone, and once it was handed to her, she didn't hesitate. "This is preposterous. Eliza couldn't possibly afford this. She's nothing but a poor beggar using my son's money. She's a cunning predator, sneaking into our family to bankrupt us." Her words echoed through the hall, venomous and loud. The presenter, taken aback but composed, quickly tried to correct the situation. "Mrs. Thompson, I assure you, you are mistaken. Eliza's company is extremely successful and fully capable of such generosity. I know this firsthand. The crowd murmured, the tension palpable. Then, in an unexpected move, the presenter passed the microphone to Jack, hoping for him to clear the air. Jack's face was a mix of embarrassment and conflict. He glanced at his parents, then at me, his voice barely a whisper as he spoke into the mic. I have nothing to say. And with that, he walked over to his parents, leaving me standing alone amidst a sea of whispers. The weight of the moment settled heavy on my shoulders. I felt exposed and humiliated, not just by the accusations, but by Jack's refusal to defend me, to affirm the truth about my success. The pride I had felt in my contribution was tarnished, overshadowed by the drama unfolding around me. Stepping into the spotlight, I approached the microphone, my heart pounding, but my resolve clear. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I started, my voice steady, despite the tumult of emotions. Tonight, I'd like to share something very personal about my journey. The room fell silent, all attention on me. I started as a street entrepreneur, not just to make ends meet, but driven by a dream. That dream led to the creation of a sportswear brand that many of you know now. Pausing, I looked around, meeting the eyes of young athletes and seasoned businessmen alike. When my company's profits hit $500,000, I fulfilled a promise to a very special person, my grandfather. I continued, my voice growing stronger. He left a will stating that his inheritance would go to a relative who made their own success, reaching that exact figure in their business. Whispers filled the hall, and I took a moment to let that sink in. That inheritance has been used to fuel not just my personal growth, but to give back through charity, much like tonight's event. The crowd was listening, some nodding, as I unfolded more of my story. After the pandemic, my business didn't just survive, it thrived, growing several times over. Every challenge faced was a stepping stone. As I concluded, I stand before you, not just as a business owner, but as someone who believes in the power of perseverance and dedication. The room erupted into applause, some guests standing in ovation. I scanned the crowd, seeing faces light up with respect and admiration, but my eyes briefly caught Jack's parents. Their expressions, once haughty, now showed disbelief and embarrassment. They quietly exited the hotel. Jack, looking equally shaken, tried to approach me, muttering an apology. Eliza, I just shook my head and walked past him, my emotions a mix of triumph and heartache. I needed space, not just from the evening's drama, but from everything. I decided to stay at the hotel that night, alone with my thoughts. Later, as I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was thick with emotion. Honey, I saw everything. I just want you to know how proud I am. To see you stand up there, telling your story, reclaiming your truth, you're everything I hoped you'd be. After spending a night at the hotel, to clear my head, I returned home. The place felt different, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves held the tension from the last few months. Jack was there, waiting. As soon as he saw me, he tried to apologize again. Eliza, I'm so sorry about everything. Can we just forget all this and start over? He pleaded, his voice desperate. I shook my head, the decision heavy on my heart, but clear in my mind. Jack, I can't. I don't want to be with someone who can't stand up for me, who sides with his parents over his wife. It's not just about last night. This has been building for a long time. His face fell, and he reached out, but I stepped back. I'm filing for divorce, I said firmly. I didn't wait for his response. I gathered a few essentials and left for my mother's house, the one I recently bought with the inheritance from my grandfather. It felt like a sanctuary after the storm I'd walked through. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. Thanks to the prenup we had signed, and with no children to consider, it was over quickly. During that time, Jack's parents tried to intervene. They called repeatedly, trying to patch things up, not for my sake, but because their son's lifestyle had changed now that I was out of the picture. I blocked their numbers. It wasn't just to silence the constant ringing, but to cut off a past that was holding me back. Through friends, I heard Jack started drinking, lost his job, and eventually, his parents disowned him, not wanting to tarnish their reputation with his downward spiral. I felt a pang of sorrow for him. Despite everything, I never wished him ill. But I knew I needed to move on. I couldn't dwell on what had been, only on what could be. Living at my mom's place gave me the peace I needed to think about my next steps. The business was still thriving, and I poured more of myself into it, not just to distract from the divorce, but to rebuild stronger foundations for my future. One evening, sitting in the garden my mom and I had started together, she turned to me, a soft smile on her face. "You did the right thing, Eliza. It's tough, but you're tougher. And I'm here, always." "Thanks, Mom. I know. It's just a lot to process," I replied, feeling the weight of her support. "As long as you remember that you're not just surviving, you're building, learning, and growing. That's what matters," she said, squeezing my hand. She was right. The end of my marriage wasn't just an ending. It was a gateway to a new chapter. One where I could make decisions without second-guessing if someone had my back. One where I could stand on my own, not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a person reshaped by her experiences. It was a typical Thursday evening at our place, nestled on the outskirts of a sprawling city. Tom and I had settled into our usual routine, him with a beer in hand, lounging on the couch after a long day at his auto repair shop, and me, Nora, eyes glued to my laptop, tracking the latest stock and cryptocurrency trends. Our home, a cozy two-story we picked out for its promise of family and future, now felt more like a battleground for our increasingly divergent lives. "So, how was the market today?" Tom asked, his tone casual, but I sensed the underlying tension. It had become our norm. "Same as always, ups and downs." "Crypto's looking good, though," I replied, trying to keep the peace. Tom scoffed, setting his beer down with a little too much force. "Crypto, again? You know, not everything that glitters is gold, Nora." I sighed, closing my laptop, bracing for the conversation we'd had countless times. "And not every car that comes into your shop is worth fixing, but you do it anyway, because you see the value in it." "Why can't you see the value in what I'm doing?" "Because cars are real, Nora. You can touch them, fix them, sell them. What you're doing, throwing our money at the wind, hoping it'll fly back with more, it's just reckless." I felt the anger bubble up, the same old argument wearing thin. "Reckless? It's not reckless, Tom. It's calculated. There's a difference between gambling and investing. I wish you'd try to understand that." Tom stood up, pacing now. "Calculated? You call putting our hard-earned money into something as volatile as cryptocurrency calculated?" "Yes, I do, because I don't go in blind. I research, I study trends, I make informed decisions. It's no different from what you do with your shop." "My shop is a sure thing, Nora. People always need car repairs. But this? This is just a phase. What happens when it crashes, huh? What then? We could lose money in any investment, Tom. The shop could falter. Nothing's guaranteed. But we've seen good returns on my investments. Isn't that worth something?" Tom stopped pacing, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's not just about the money, Nora. It's about security, about not risking everything on a damn coin flip. Why can't we invest more in the shop, expand it? That's a real, tangible way to grow our money. And put all our eggs in one basket? What if something happens to the shop, Tom? Diversification is key. That's investing 101. He shook his head, the gap between our perspectives as vast as ever. "Diversification, sure. But into something stable, not this digital fairy dust." I stood up now, feeling the need to defend my choices, my independence. "You know, for someone who runs his own business, you're surprisingly close-minded. And you're surprisingly stubborn," he shot back. "All I'm saying is, we could be using that money to build something lasting, something we can see and touch, not just numbers on a screen. The conversation was going nowhere, as usual. Let's just agree to disagree, okay? I won't criticize how you run your shop, and you don't criticize my investments. Tom sighed, the fight draining from him. Fine. But just remember, Nora, when all this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. The tension between Tom and me wasn't the only strain in our lives. His family dynamics added another layer of complexity. Living close to his parents and sister meant frequent interactions, each one a reminder of our differing views on family and responsibility. It was a Sunday afternoon when Tom suggested we visit his parents. The idea alone made my stomach knot. It wasn't the parents I minded, it was Sarah, Tom's sister. Her lifestyle and choices were a constant source of bewilderment to me. Come on, Nora, it's been ages since we've seen them. And Mum's been asking about you. And more. You know Dad is fighting cancer. Tom pressed, noticing my hesitation. Yeah, I bet Sarah's missed me too. I muttered, my sarcasm not lost on Tom. Look, I know you two don't see eye to eye, but can't you just? I don't know, try? For me? Sighing, I agreed. Fine, but I'm not staying if she starts on one of her shopping spree stories. We arrived to find Sarah already there, flaunting her latest designer bag. The air of superiority she carried like a perfume instantly grated on me. Look at this, just got it yesterday. Isn't it just fabulous? She gushed, barely acknowledging our presence. It's something, I managed to say, biting my tongue. Tom's mother, oblivious to the tension, ushered us in. Nora, dear, so glad you could make it. You two should visit more often. The afternoon dragged on, with Sarah dominating the conversation, recounting her latest vacation and shopping exploits. I tried to keep a neutral face, engaging in minimal conversation, but my patience was wearing thin. So, Nora, still playing with your stocks and bits? Sarah sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. It's called investing, Sarah. You should try it sometime instead of blowing through money on things you don't need. I shot back, my annoyance breaking through. Tom shot me a warning look, but it was too late. Sarah scoffed. Investing? Please, like gambling on the internet is anything to brag about. At least when I spend my money, I have something to show for it. Something to show until it goes out of fashion next season, I retorted, unable to help myself. That's enough, both of you. Tom's father interjected, his tone stern. We're here to enjoy each other's company, not to argue about whatever this is. The rest of the visit passed in an uncomfortable silence. As we left, Tom couldn't hold back his frustration. Nora, why do you have to provoke her? Can't you just let it go for one afternoon? Me? Provoke her? She's the one who started it with her snide remarks. I'm just not going to sit there and take it, Tom. It's just, sometimes I wish you'd try a little harder, for the sake of peace. Try harder? Tom, I'm not the one splurging on luxuries and then flaunting them in everyone's face. Why doesn't anyone tell her to stop acting like a spoiled brat? Because she's family, Nora. We look out for each other, even if we don't always agree with what they're doing. That's just it, Tom. Looking out for each other is one thing, but enabling bad behavior is another. There's a difference, and it's about time someone pointed it out to her. Tom sighed, the weariness evident in his voice. I know. But what can we do? She's set in her ways, and Mom and Dad aren't going to change how they treat her. It's not just about Sarah, Tom. It's about us, too. How are we supposed to plan for our future when there's always going to be this financial black hole in your family? We'll figure it out, Nora. We always do. The news hit us hard and fast. Tom's dad, Mr. Harrison, had lost his battle with cancer. It felt like one moment we were discussing treatment options, and the next, we were plunged into mourning. Amidst the shock and grief, Sarah, Tom's sister, took charge of the funeral arrangements. It wasn't long before she dropped a bombshell on us about the cost. Sitting in our living room, looking like a storm cloud had settled over his head, Tom relayed what Sarah had told him. "Nora, Sarah says the funeral's gonna cost $60,000. She's expecting us to chip in half." I nearly choked on my tea. $60,000? Tom, that's insane. Are we funding a funeral or a royal wedding here? Tom's face darkened, his eyes narrowing. Now's not the time, Nora. This isn't about the money. It's about giving my dad the send-off he deserves. But $60,000? There has to be a mistake. It's too much. Too much? Tom's voice rose, and I could see the vein in his forehead starting to pulse. My dad has just died, Nora. And here you are, haggling over pennies. What's wrong with you? I flinched at his harshness. I'm not haggling, Tom. I'm just shocked. We never even spent that kind of money on our own house. Tom stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know what? I don't need this. I don't need you telling me what's too much for my own father's funeral. If you can't see past your damn spreadsheets for once, maybe you should just stay out of it. The hurt from his words cut deep, but I swallowed my retort. This was grief talking, not my Tom. I'm sorry, Tom. I'll transfer the $30,000 to Sarah. This is a lot to process. Tom paced the room, hands buried in his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd come to recognize over the years. Yeah, well, it's not just about the money, Nora. It's about doing right by him. And if that means paying whatever it costs, then so be it. When I confirmed the transfer to Sarah, Tom barely acknowledged it, lost in his own world of grief and anger. The distance between us felt like miles, not the few feet of our living room. Walking into the funeral agency, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The last few days had been a blur of grief and confusion, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to learn. I'm here for Mr. Harrison's funeral, I announced to the woman behind the counter, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up from her computer, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're a day late. Mr. Harrison was cremated yesterday. My heart stopped. What? But, how? I was told the funeral was today. She shook her head gently, her eyes full of sympathy. The family requested to move the date forward. I'm very sorry for your loss and the confusion. I stood there, dumbfounded, my mind racing. How could Tom not tell me? Why was I left in the dark about such a significant change? Fuming, I dialed Tom's number, my fingers shaking with anger and disbelief. Tom, why the hell didn't you tell me the funeral was moved? I just showed up like an idiot, only to find out I missed everything. Tom's voice was cold, detached. Because I didn't think you cared, Nora. All you've done is complain about the costs and question every decision. Why would I think you'd want to be there? Because he was my father-in-law. Because I'm your wife. How could you just exclude me like that? My voice cracked, a mixture of hurt and fury. Well, maybe not for long. He shot back, and I could almost hear the bitterness seeping through the phone. What's that supposed to mean? I demanded, my heart sinking. I'm done, Nora. I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who's so indifferent. You're more concerned with your bitcoins and shares than with this family. I've got the divorce papers ready. His words were like a slap in the face. Divorce? Was he serious? You're kidding, right? Over this? Tom, we can talk about it, we can work things out. No, Nora. It's too late. The house is going up for sale. We'll split everything and go our separate ways. That's it. I was speechless, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. Stunned, I wandered back to the parking lot, where I saw Sarah pulling in, driving a brand new luxury car. The sight of it made my blood boil. Nice car, Sarah. Where'd you get the money for this? Inheritance? Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she tossed her hair back. Yeah, something like that. Dad left me a little something. The casual way she mentioned her father, with shopping bags in her hands and not a trace of sadness on her face, was infuriating. A little something, huh? Looks like morning is treating you pretty well. Sarah's smile faded, replaced by a smirk. Well, we all grieve in our own ways, don't we? Some of us invest in stocks, and some of us in cars. I clenched my fists, the injustice of it all burning inside me. This was all wrong. Tom and I were falling apart, and here was Sarah, benefiting from the chaos. Enjoy the car, Sarah. Looks like it cost a pretty penny. Or should I say, a pretty dollar? She laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the empty parking lot. Oh, Nora, always so concerned about the money. Don't worry, it's all been taken care of. I watched her walk away, her laughter lingering in the air. The man I loved wanted nothing to do with me, and the family I had tried to be a part of was showing their true colors. The days following the funeral felt like navigating through a thick fog of disbelief and betrayal. The weight of the divorce papers in my bag felt like carrying a boulder, a constant reminder of my crumbling marriage. But the sight of Sarah's new luxury car planted a seed of suspicion that I couldn't shake off. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I decided to pay a visit to the funeral home, hoping to uncover some answers. Walking into the funeral home, a mix of suspicion and determination fueled my steps. It felt surreal, being here under these circumstances, but I needed answers. The place was quiet, the air filled with a solemnity fitting its purpose. At the reception, I recognized a face from the past, Jackie, a classmate from high school who'd ended up in the most unexpected of places. Jackie! I exclaimed, a bit too loudly for the setting. I didn't know you worked here. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face, before recognition set in. Nora? Wow, it's been ages. What brings you here? Something I can help with? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Yeah, actually. It's about my father-in-law's funeral. I heard it was arranged here. Jackie's expression turned professional, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Sure, let me pull up the details. Give me a sec. As she typed away, I fidgeted, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. The moment she found the record, her brows furrowed. Okay, here it is. The service was pretty standard. Cremation was requested, keeping things on the simpler side. The total came to $5,000. My heart sank. $5,000? But that's not what we were told. We paid $60,000, or at least, we were led to believe that's what it cost. Jackie paused, her face a mask of concern. That's a huge difference. It was Sarah who handled the arrangements, right? Everything here was billed at $5,000, no more. The pieces were starting to fit together, a picture I didn't want to see. Can you print me a copy of that bill? I need proof. Sure thing, Jackie said, her tone sympathetic. She quickly printed out a duplicate of the check and handed it to me. Holding the paper, it felt like a piece of a puzzle that would unravel a bigger deception. Thanks, Jackie. I've got to sort this out. Armed with the printout from the funeral home, my next stop was confronting the family, particularly Sarah. The air felt heavy as I drove to my mother-in-law's house, where I knew they'd all be gathered, probably discussing the estate and the aftermath of the funeral. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and determination. When I arrived, the house was eerily quiet. I hesitated at the door, gathering my courage before stepping inside. The sound of my footsteps seemed to echo through the hallway, announcing my arrival. In the living room, Tom, Sarah, and my mother-in-law were seated, looking like a picture of mourning that was about to be shattered. My mother-in-law, her eyes shadowed with grief, broke the silence first. Dear, we missed you yesterday at the funeral. We thought you'd be there. Taking a deep breath, I replied, I was told it was today. I'm so sorry for your loss, my voice steady despite the churn of emotions inside me. I then turned to Tom. Can we talk? In private? I hoped to spare his mother any more distress. Tom's response cut through the room. No secrets here. You're not part of this family anymore, remember? His words stung, but I pushed on, pulling out the check from the funeral home. Then explain this to me. The funeral cost $5,000, not the $60,000 Sarah claimed. Where did the rest go? Tom looked genuinely shocked, turning to Sarah with a bewildered, "What's this about?" Sarah squirmed under our gazes. I needed the money," she finally admitted, her voice small. The revelation seemed to hang in the air until Tom's mom, overhearing, added, "Your father saved for his own farewell. I even gave Sarah $10,000 more to cover everything." I did the math out loud, tension rising. $70,000 in total, and only $5,000 spent. Sarah, where's the rest? Flustered, Sarah confessed to splurging the money on a new car for herself, her gaze darting away, unable to meet mine. I expected Tom to explode, but instead, he almost tenderly told Sarah, "You shouldn't have done that. Be more careful next time." His response floored me. Careful? She committed fraud, Tom. And you're okay with that? Tom's justification left me reeling. You wouldn't understand. You've got no family, you don't get what it means to stick together. That was the last straw. In front of them all, I signed the divorce papers with a flourish. Sarah, you owe me $30,000. Pay up, or I'm going to the police. Tom's protests followed me out the door, but I didn't look back. I'd seen enough, heard enough. The betrayal was complete, and so was my resolve. As I walked away, the finality of my actions settled in. There was no going back, only forward from here, away from the lies and the deceit that had marred what I once thought of as family. Packing up my life into boxes felt surreal, like I was an observer in my own story. The "for sale" sign outside the house was a stark reminder of the finality of it all. By afternoon, I was settling into a small apartment that felt more like a fresh start than a downgrade. That evening, as I was sorting through the remnants of my past life, my phone rang. Tom's name flashed on the screen, a name I no longer felt attached to. I answered, curiosity edging out resentment. "Nora, you need to back off Sarah." Tom's voice came through, tinged with an uncharacteristic harshness. Back off? I laughed, cold and sharp. Not a chance, Tom. She took from me, and I want it back. Your sister's a thief. Tom was silent for a moment. She's family. You wouldn't understand. Family? I scoffed. That ship has sailed, Tom. As far as I'm concerned, you and your sister are just people I used to know. He tried to argue, but I cut him off. Save it. Sarah has 2 weeks to return my money, or I'm pressing charges. And you? Stay out of it. You're nothing to me now. Hanging up, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. The man I once loved was now just another obstacle in my path to reclaiming my life. 2 weeks later, a knock at my door heralded the return of my $30,000. Sarah stood there, her posture defiant, a sneer playing on her lips. Here's your money, she spat, thrusting an envelope into my hands. Happy now, you money-grubbing witch? I took the envelope, my gaze steady. It's not about the money, Sarah. It's about principle. About not letting you walk all over people. She laughed, hollow and bitter. Whatever helps you sleep at night. As she turned to leave, I called out. Just remember, Sarah. Karma's a real pain. What goes around, comes around. Closing the door, I leaned against it, the envelope heavy in my hand. The money was a small victory, but the real win was standing up for myself, refusing to be a victim of their greed and lies. Life had found a new rhythm, calmer and more predictable, when out of the blue, my phone rang, displaying a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Tom, a voice from a past I had neatly folded away. Hey, I need a favor. A big one. Tom's voice sounded more worn than I remembered. I paused, the suddenness of the call throwing me. A favor? Tom, we're past favors, don't you think? It's Sarah. She's in deep this time. Debt's up to her eyeballs, and the wolves are at the door. We've sold everything, the house, the shop, it's still not enough. His words took a moment to sink in. And you're calling me why? I'm not part of this circus anymore, Tom. He sighed, a sound of desperation. Come on, don't be like that. You got out, made it big with your trading. Can't you spare something, for old time's sake? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, he still saw me as a lifeline for their mess. Spare something? For her? After she nearly ruined us with her lies? You've got some nerve, Tom. It's not just for her. It's for all of us. You wouldn't be where you are without me. Don't forget that, he countered, his voice edged with bitterness. A laugh, sharp and short, escaped me. Where I am is despite you, not because of you. You think I owe you? That's rich. There was silence on the line, heavy and uncomfortable. So, that's it then? You're going to turn your back on us? Us? There is no us, Tom. There hasn't been for a long time. And as for turning my back, I think you've got me confused with someone who still cares. Hanging up, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, yes, but also relief. That chapter of my life was truly closed now. Sitting in the living room of my new house, a place I had earned with my sweat and smarts, I realized how far I had come. This was my sanctuary, built not on the shaky grounds of deceit and manipulation, but on my resilience and hard work.